Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll. I'm your host, Shwin, in this episode 63. I'm joined today not by a first-time guest, but a first time in a long time. His name is Yash Satish Kumar. You can follow him on Twitter at Mathgetball. He is the head video coordinator and analytics for Cal Poly, the men's basketball team over there. He also is the co-host of the Beyond the Arc pod. Yash, how you doing? How's the job going?
Yeah, I first off, appreciate you for having me on. It's great to be back. And yeah, it's been great. It's a unique experience being a part of a team like this. We're only in the off season right now, but it's been a lot of fun. Excited for the season, but yeah, things are going pretty well.
Awesome, good to hear. We are going to be talking a little bit about the Warriors, a little bit about the Knicks. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strick on Instagram. We are posting all kinds of new content on there. Strickland also has a YouTube channel, maybe where you may be watching this podcast. If you are not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website, www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the store. And you can find all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it. We've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our news podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord with the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to this pod right here, Strick and Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks and more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Brennan, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, which is hosted by Constantine Metrocoast. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and another $100 tier that's come with a variety of additional benefits. You listen to pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, and get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. All right. So the Warriors, disappointing season last year. Did not make the playoffs. They lost in the play-in to the Kings. They have definitely undergone some real changes this offseason. Obviously, Klay Thompson departed, so the Splash Brothers are no longer together. He is in Dallas. They were active. They brought in D'Anthony Melton, 1 year, $12 million. They also signed Buddy Hield. I don't remember the exact details in that contract. And then they also added Kyle Anderson, I believe 3 years, $27 million on that. This feels a little bit like of an incomplete offseason. Obviously, we know that they were trying, or at least looking to acquire Lauri Markkanen. They also had serious conversations about getting Paul George. I don't think the Paul George thing ever went anywhere because the Clippers seemed like they were never going to trade him in the division. Do you feel like this roster is, because I like what they did, but it does feel incomplete. Is that how you feel about it? Or are you like, I guess, are you fine with where things are right now?
Right. I definitely understand that perspective because on paper, this team obviously has Steph Curry. It's got Draymond Green. That's core part of their offense, but they don't have that number two option. Like that's been the story all summer. And as you talked about, they've been looking at some guys. And to me, on paper, I do agree with that. Like at least based off of the guys on the roster and how they played last season, they don't exactly have that. I think what they're relying on is internal development of someone like Jonathan Kuminga. He's their best bet of potentially, if he scales up his game, he could be that guy. And obviously it's going to look a little different. And there's always question marks and relying on internal development. But I think that's the direction they're going. And if you're asking me how I feel about it, I'm excited for it because obviously Steph and Klay, that was a time. That was an era. But I think as a fan, as someone that's grown up in the Bay, I think I'm at the point where I wanted to see something different, and I literally liked what Jonathan Kuminga showed last year. I think he ended up averaging 16 a game, but his second half of the season numbers were, they were indicative of someone that could potentially be a second option, getting close to that 20 points per game threshold, guy that can get to the basket, create a little bit, although in a limited capacity. So he's shown flashes in the past. This season is just going to be about, can he put it together? And I think that's what the excitement's about.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Kuminga. Before we do that, getting back to the Klay, I got to be honest. I thought Klay was terrible last year. I know that like the numbers on the surface looked fine. I mean, he was still efficient, still shot a good number from three. But I honestly, like, every time I looked at his numbers last year, I was like, it's crazy that he's shooting whatever he shot, like 42% from three. Because I feel like every time I'm watching them play, he's playing like an asshole. Like, he's like taking terrible shots. He's not. They were like, they had to kind of use him on threes and fours last year because he's not as capable of defending on the perimeter as he used to be. Quite frankly, he's just a bad defender now. And it just, like, there was all this weird. I mean, I know that I'm not the first person to bring this up, but like, I remember a couple years ago, Steve Kerr said something like, Klay isn't zero maintenance, he's no maintenance, something like that. Like I said, like, basically you don't have to worry about him. And then last year, the last couple of years, really, and I talked about this actually before last season, but more in relation to Draymond. Like, it just has felt like since he's come back from that injury, he's constantly like, it always feels like he's trying to be, Game 6, 2016 Western Conference Finals Klay, and he's just not that guy anymore, which is fine. Like, he's had multiple devastating injuries. He's played a lot of NBA minutes, obviously, in his career. He's well into his 30s at this point. Like, it's fine for him to not be that the same player, but it doesn't feel like he's accepted that, or at least he didn't when he was on Golden State the last couple of years. And there was moments where you thought, okay, he's kind of getting it, like when they moved him to the bench, and at first he wasn't happy about it, but then he kind of embraced the role. But it just felt like he was never totally happy. Now, I don't think all of that is just about his role on the team. I think that also was about, he was very unhappy that other guys, like, I think this has been reported, but they extended, obviously, Draymond after they won the championship. They extended Jordan Poole, they extended Andrew Wiggins, and he was upset. And I understand it from just like a, look, business is business, but it's foolish to think that emotions don't get involved here. And for him, he's obviously, and rightfully so, views himself as, hey, like, I was a core piece of, forgetting just like, winning championships, but we were the Warriors were a fucking joke before for a long time. And I was, obviously Steph is the biggest key, but I was a key part of turning that around. And now you're paying these other guys before you're paying me. And then obviously the way it kind of unfolded this offseason, where they didn't really ever make him an offer. I think it just soured. I think all of that kind of ran its course, and it led to him being unhappy. And hey, look, maybe he's going to go to Dallas and that'll all change. But I got to say, like, I mean, I've looked at these numbers a bunch because I've just been like, I'm kind of flabbergasted at how bullish everybody seems to be about, Klay Thompson in Dallas. But like, if you just look at the numbers, and I'm not even using really advanced numbers here, but like, if you just look at their net rating stuff, I mean, Klay Thompson he had the worst on-off of anybody that was in their rotation last year, like serious rotation player. He was a minus 7.6 on-off. His on-court rating was worse than, again, everybody aside from Andrew Wiggins, who was seriously in the rotation last year. And this is while playing a ton of minutes with Steph. And I just look at all of that, you look at kind of his unhappiness, his inability to maybe scale down his game. And I'm sure that there was some, I'm sure like a guy like Kuminga is kind of like, hey, like, let me kind of spread my wings out a little bit more. But it's hard because Klay's obviously, he still thinks like, I'm the number 2 guy on this team. So I think there's stuff going on there too. And anyway, I think I watched I mean, I end up watching the Warriors a lot because one, it's like, once the East Coast games gets done, then you switch over to the West Coast, and it's like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, I'll watch Steph Curry. Like, that sounds awesome. But like, I genuinely, and I mean this, like, I think that this is, and especially if Melton is healthy, I think this is like a massive. Him and Heal together are just massive upgrades over the minutes that Clay gave you last year, and I'm actually kind of like, I don't love his fit in Dallas because I think defensively it kind of opens up some stuff that I don't really know is getting enough attention. Like, there's a difference between Derek Jones Jr. being your kind of your three and having him and PJ Washington and Lively versus Clay when you already have Luka, who, let's just say, defense is not maybe his biggest passion. Either is staying in shape in the offseason. And Kyrie Irving, who, like, I actually think when he's kind of focused, he's a really good defender. He can be a good defender, but look, he's not going to be that in the regular season. So I don't know. Like, I really could not be more kind of like, I'm betting the Warriors over almost entirely because I'm like, I think without Clay, they're going to be better.
Yeah, I mean, on a per value basis, I think I'd agree with that. Like, that's been the center point of discussion too. Like, can they replace? Obviously, Clay is still Clay offensively. In certain respects, he's not what he was in his prime. Still very good on that side, but a lot of the discussion is, could you replace what he is as a collective with the pieces they brought? And I think on a per value, like on just looking at sheer impact, I think they might have done that. But I think, so basically, I think their floor is a little higher, maybe than it was with Clay. But I think their ceiling is lower because Klay Thompson is still Klay Thompson when he's. I mean, the games where Clay was on, he was absolutely on, and that kind of player within Golden State is always important. And even when he's off, Clay brings that. He's going to warrant that attention that he on defense, and so that created a lot of offense for them the last couple of years. But I think the margin for error on this team, given that you don't have a number two like Clay did at least within the system, it's definitely a lot slimmer. Like if Steph Curry gets injured, if Draymond gets injured, I mean, Clay was the guy even in the last couple of years that could take that load, and he won games for them the last couple of years. Now you don't have that, and it gets a lot more tricky, especially when the West is this deep. But like you mentioned, like I think Buddy Hield is a good fit, but offensively, I think he's going to have one of the best years of his career. I don't know if he's ever gotten the freedom to shoot and to move the way he has. I guess he did in Indiana last year, but it's sort of like a similar situation. Kyle Anderson also,
and he was good. Like, he was good offensively, anyways, in Indiana. Yeah, so
exactly.
Kind of bodes well. Yeah.
Exactly. And then Kyle Anderson is kind of like they envision him as like a Draymond on the backup end, and he brings a lot defensively. Melton, a defense that can shoot, can create a little bit out of pick and roll. So I think they have guys that they've had that sort of emulate the role players and the glue guys they had in their winning years. It's just like they don't have that firepower up top. And I think while that's what makes their floor pretty high, but their ceiling pretty low. Again, this is barring any internal development stories like Kuminga, Moody, etc.
Yeah. With Kyle Anderson, is he there to bolster the bench? Like, is he like there to kind of run maybe not run the bench, but organize the kind of offense when Steph is off the floor? Or is he somebody that's going to be in the starting lineup, you think?
I don't think he's starting. I think Trace Jackson Davis played his way into the starting five, but against certain lineups, or in certain games, I can see him closing games for sure. And just in general, I'd say he's going to have a significant role on this team. The Warriors have had their eye on Kyle, and even if reports haven't been out there, I'm sure they've had an eye on him as a system fit because again, he's a guy that can put the ball in his hands and he can run offense through DHOs, find cutters. Move the ball. He's a guy that can, like you said, captain that bench offense. And so I think that's mostly where his role will be, where he'll be with that second unit, connecting lineups as a glue guy, both offensively and defensively. And against certain matchups, who knows? So with Steve Kerr loves to feel out lineups, feel out situations. So you could see him in closing lineups. But I think penciling him in as a 20-minute per game guy is pretty safe, I'd say.